Hi everyone, I'm Amber Salas reporting for GALvanize today with another edition of our Who Not Do series. I'm joined today by Jane McManus, who many of you know for her work with ESPN, the New York Daily News, and now as the Director of Sports Communication at Marist College. Jane, thank you so much for taking the time today.
I'm happy to be here and talk to you.
Well, Jane, we all know so much about the work you do and that you're so great at it, but if I wanted to know who you are outside of being a sports journalist, where would I even begin?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. So I was born in Southern Virginia, and when I was 11, I moved to Nebraska. So kind of, different, like I think that kind of got me out of my bubble to begin with. And gave me a different perspective on sports. When I moved to Nebraska at 11, Virginia didn't have a lot of pro teams, certainly not in Southern Virginia. And then I moved to Nebraska, and I can just remember that one of the first days in sixth grade, we all were passed around a sheet of paper. We were supposed to guess what the Cornhuskers final score was going to be that weekend. And I was like, what is this craziness? And like, there was a pencil for the kid who got closest to the final score. And I just thought it was the weirdest thing. And then I realized, like, oh my gosh, sports is this completely different thing. And I'd always participated in sports and seen it. I'd been the kind of kid that, played football and baseball in the neighborhood with everybody else and climbed trees and all that stuff. I was a really active kid. But this was the first time I got a load of like organized sports and what that meant. So that, and then I played a lot of basketball in college, and I played pickup basketball in New York, all over the place whenever I could when I moved to the city. And then I played roller derby for 7 years. So I think I come at sports from the perspective of somebody who likes to play and be active. And, that's my background. I'm firmly grounded in wanting to be active. And that's where I come to sports and how I approach it.
Now, life is also all about navigating those twists and turns that are inevitably thrown our way. So, you originally thought you were going to go to law school and then end up with a master's in journalism. So, what did you learn about yourself through navigating all those pivots?
First of all, nice job doing your homework. That is very good. Excellent. You get points for that. Like that was definitely something. I liked journalism when I was in high school. And then I got really into sports when I was in college. And afterwards I worked at a law firm. I remember like I just had to do a gut check when I started working at the law firm. So we're talking about like 1994, 95. I worked for one of the big firms in the city. And I worked for the only Black partner at the firm. And he had a team within the context of the law firm that was filled with women, which was very unusual, very unusual at the time. I realized though, even though I was in the best possible situation for me within the context of that firm, that it really wasn't for me. He had 2 clients that were sports related. And so I got opportunities to work on those cases. And it just kind of, I was rollerblading in Prospect Park with my friend Naja. And I realized I did not want to be a lawyer. And I just said to her, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And she said to me, you should be a sports writer. And it was just that clear. It was that moment of clarity. And I think sometimes like you need your friends who know you to kind of reflect back to you what you're good at and what you're passionate about. And that was just an absolute moment where that happened for me. But it was that moment, that pivot moment for me was right there on skates. And I was like, what am I going to do? And how am I going to figure out how to become a sports writer in the middle of New York City while I'm working at this law firm? And it was just kind of but you figure out how to do things, right? Once you know what your goal is, the path emerges. And at that moment, I had my goal.
Now, another big twist for you, you ended up moving to England for 2 years after being let go by ESPN. Now, when you reflect back on that moment, that's one that we definitely all fear, but eventually go through. So, do you view that as one of the worst moments of your career or more one of your most important in getting you to where you are now?
Yes, I do. I think that is something that so many people in our business go through just because our business is in such turmoil. I do remember thinking back, like nobody likes to be told that we're laying you off. Like 100 people were laid off that day. So I couldn't feel like singled out or particularly like victimized by the whole thing. Also, I had a contract at ESPN and they agreed to pay everybody through the end of their contract. I had a year left on my deal. And I have two beautiful daughters, and my husband's a teacher. And we made the decision then to move. And my husband got a job teaching in London, and our daughters went to that school. We lived there for 2 years and traveled all over Europe. And it was a great moment in my life, even though it wasn't a great moment in my career. And I do tell people, like, when that happens, when you're laid off, if it happens, or when you make a transition, to look for those moments where you can pursue a personal goal. Like, my daughters are forever changed because of that experience. And we could spend the next hour where I could just talk about the things that came out of that were so great. And I did freelancing abroad, covering Wimbledon and Premier League games. And like, it really opened my eyes too to how sports are played, and how women's sports are perceived in other parts of the world. Like, there were a lot of things that came out of that have made me a better writer. And then getting the opportunity when I saw the opportunity for the Maris directorship opening up, that wasn't where I thought I was going in my career necessarily, but I love this job. And so it's been a really great turn for me. So, absolutely no regrets. And when I don't know that I can ever look back at that moment and say, oh, that was a great moment, but it did lead to some really great things in my life. So I'm actually very appreciative.
Now, I also read that you've said that some of the greatest moments of your career have been spent in the classroom helping others. So how so?
I think I think in any career, in any business, that part of your satisfaction comes from knowing that you can pass along what you've learned. I think that's particularly valuable in sports when you're a woman, because we don't still have critical mass. But I feel like talking to young women in our business about what they might experience, and you don't want to ever scare anybody off, because but I think having a clear view of what you might encounter also kind of makes you smarter, because then you have the tools that you need. Maybe it's a phrase, maybe it's looking at an athlete and saying, if I have any future questions for you about this story, what's the best way to get in touch with you? And that way you can get contact information in a way that makes it very clear that it's a professional ask that you're making. So those are the kinds of things that are helpful, I think, in our business. But it's not just teaching young women or, mentoring young women. It's also all students, and being able to talk about sports. I mean, just like I said, I come at this from somebody who really liked playing and, moving and competing, and somebody who's really competitive. And I love talking about sports from that point of view as well. And I really like seeing young people like find their way and their skill set and improve. And those are things that are really, you like seeing. I love knowing layers of generations of reporters in this business. I find that really satisfying.
Well, your students are definitely so lucky to have someone like you. Now, this last question I have for you is as a teacher and a longtime sports journalist, but I'm just beginning my journey in this industry. And if you could instill just one piece of advice in my brain that I'm guaranteed to remember the rest of my career, what would that be?
Well, I really have a 10-part, so I'll just try to give you one. But I would say, like, what you're doing now, where you make connections, right? Where you do your homework about people when you meet them, so that you're bringing something and showing you've put in some work. That's impressive. So do that when you're interacting with people. Keep numbers, keep in touch with people. It's not easy to get a job in this business. It's not easy to remain in this business, but you do it because of who you know and the relationships that you make. And this is not a job where you're going to, put your resume out on a website and get the job you're looking for. It really is about cultivating people and getting to know people. And that's part of what makes us good at our jobs, right? It's being able to be personable with athletes and coaches and people in the industry. And so that's part of what people are looking for when they hire. So making sure that you remember people's names, that you remember something about them, that you add value to the relationship when you walk into it. Those are all things that are going to be, they're going to lay the foundation for the skills that you need to succeed in this career. So good luck.
Well, thank you. And Jane, I already was such a fan of the work you do, but I'm so grateful to know more about who you are. So thank you so much for taking the time to share with me today.
I really enjoyed this, and best of luck to you. Okay, keep in touch. You have my information.
Yes, of course.